Alright, in my last video I talked a little bit about NPCs, non-player characters, and had a few things to say about that. Realized that I hadn't said certain things I had considered in the past before. So, those certain things were... see if I can remember now. Those certain things were the phenomenon of automatic pilot behavior. Another way of saying is what I call default worldviews. A default worldview might be the religion your parents brought you up into because you're initially told a certain that this, whatever the foundations of this might be, is a truth, and if you never quite ask yourself, how does this thing suit me and not suit me as a person individually? How am I different from my parents? How am I different from these beliefs? You won't really know whether you truly believe it or not if you don't at least attempt to go through that process. Hence the term default worldviews. But automatic pilot behavior, that I believe is something that is learned and can be trained through repetition. One of the points that I found very important to distinguish about automatic pilot behavior as it correlates to the subject of non-player characters in video games. So one of the things Jonathan Blow, the programmer, points out, a programmer of video games, that's who he is, he points out how some programmers are some of the most automatic pilot people out there using techniques that already exist that aren't so good. Players themselves, players of video games, the idea of calling someone a non-player character in real life as if they're a non-player character in a game, some gamers are some very automatic pilot people too. This isn't meant to be an offensive video. It's just pointing out how these behaviors can be learned, but they also can be unlearned. So when you call someone else an NPC, a non-player character in this reality, the video game that is life, you've got this magic spell going on as if you've got it figured out a little better than other people do. How do we really know that? Does that question even matter? Because from my perception, we all have different starting points, different paths, different destinations. Those paths change, those destinations change. Sometimes we confuse ourselves into thinking, that's the destination I want to go. When you get there, you're like, wow, that's not what I thought it was going to be, right? As well as the path on the way there. So, I would rather just take ownership of that and not worry about whatever anyone else's automatic pilot behavior is. I'd rather examine it myself, what it is. I am not always that great at it. Sometimes I'm pretty good at it, because at the end of the day, whether I get to my destination or not, I'm the one who has to deal with the consequences, whatever my actions are. And you see, I believe there's been a lot of twisting of meaning in our world. I've mentioned this with the etymology of words in a lot of other videos, but before I'm not going to get into etymology. I kind of want to just show you how many times we think we have an equation correct about what's going to happen, an outcome, a goal, a dream, anything, and how often we are wrong about it. Or maybe not even wrong, but there's something inside of ourselves that we've convinced ourselves that that's actually what we want, and it really may not be that at all. That is more interesting, more fascinating to look into than whatever NPCs exist around us, other people. When we look at it that way, the subject of NPCs is really irrelevant. It has nothing to do with us becoming the deeper artist within ourselves, the more suitable creator. Rather than thinking about what's better than each other, figuring out what suits us, like what's at home, what fits well when we put it on, and examining ourselves honestly, does it really fit? These are the questions to be asking, right? Why? Because the more we show up as our authentic, creative self, then the more likely it's going to have a chain reaction others around us. And that's the discipline, right? Is that you don't change your progression based on what you see happening around you. Like, oh, I'm stirring the universe, oh my goodness. And then you might want to go interact with that universe in a way that wasn't the thing that was speaking to you the most, that felt suitable and more at home. The trick is to keep on focusing on that regardless of how the universe behaves around us, right? That it's an extension of that excitement rather than some fear spell or some stagnation spell that we could perpetuate out there. So I'm really calling NPCs, non-player characters, a stagnation spell, a program that inhibits programming. And yes, that spell isn't completely responsible for it. There's a lot of other spells that create people who are in automatic pilot behavior. I mean, this is why I studied the etymology of words, because I noticed that people's words, and I've said this in other videos, they often are completely different than their actions. And if you look up in the etymology of words, you can see exactly why. Because there's this weird confusion, this weird twisting of meaning and definitions that's been going on for a long time. I have my theories about why it was twisted and how some people use such words for control mechanisms. But there's lots of people who are being real magicians, using words with poetic intent, where they really just completely open your reality, releasing it from these chains and these twisted meanings. Poetic intent, right? When you, for example, self-centered is often considered a bad thing, right? Take the word, and the same two words, and call it the centered self, and all of a sudden you're like, huh, was self-centered even a bad thing? That just sounds like balance to me, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you are more centered than others. It just means that you're finding what the center of you is. You're self-centered. We've made... So the words themselves don't really seem to fit, say, someone who's a narcissist, which is what a lot of people have come to utilize that term with, self-centered. But it doesn't have to, right? It's the meaning behind the words, the implications. People often... This is what conscious magic and creation is all about, is we are often saying words and not truly knowing what the meaning of our words are. So as soon as you draw attention to, like, wait a minute, what am I really saying? Oh, there's programming in there that doesn't really seem suitable. It's not who I am. It's not who I want to be anymore. It's somebody else's spell, whether they know it or not. Sometimes they do, whoever they is. But there's this magic of curiosity where you're really interested in how weird something that you've seen every single day over and over again, and then one day something about it circuit breaks or something just seems off, and you're like, that's not really what it is. And it's actually exciting and fascinating. This curiosity, this eagerness to know. It's tracing a trail. And the tracing the trail is very much like detectives who love mystery, or scientists of the unknown, or people who are into, like, aliens, or whatever pick your poison, as they say, you know. There, right there is a spell. I made poison sound like a good thing, right? Poetic intent. Whatever your kicks you get, whatever gets your rocks off, whatever that might be, whatever excites you, whatever drives you, that tracing breadcrumbs into something that becomes much more massive, like hunting for treasure, like looking for a treasure in a map, that exercise itself is the joy itself. It is the juice. It is the treasure. The more we treat it that way, the more likely we are going... If you appreciate a crumb, you can appreciate a giant meal of that crumb. right? And the more you appreciate that crumb within a giant meal or feast, this is around Thanksgiving time when I fell into this. The more you appreciate the small, the more likely you're going to be a better chef than most people, right? Not that it matters more to people. The best chef that you can be, right? You're a suitable cook for oneself. You're a self-centered cook, right? The more you're cooking up your passions, your juices, you're going to get things that are mind-boggling. It starts with small things. You can't have mind explosions or epiphanies of the universe unless we enjoy the little tiny little realizations so they can build up and become there, right? So that to me is the cure out of automatic pilot behavior. And it's really an exercise of remembering who we are. And what does that mean? I believe that as kids, we have more of a link to our reincarnated selves, if we are a reincarnated soul. And we get educated out of this through academia, which tries to promote itself that it'll get you a job, and it often doesn't. And jobs also try to inhibit, they try to force upon you this productivity, this manufacturing. You're not worth anything unless you're making something. When in reality, when you're a kid, you already are this beautiful being.